Get ready to embark on a journey of resilience and healing with Building Bulletproof Backs. In this captivating podcast, we explore the inspiring stories of real-life back pain sufferers who have overcome challenges to find a path to wellness. Led by Marian McRae, a seasoned physiotherapist with over 25 years of experience, each episode delves into the transformative power of holistic healing strategies that empower individuals to reclaim their lives from the grips of pain. Join us as we uncover innovative solutions and offer a beacon of hope to all those seeking relief and a brighter future.
Hey, welcome to episode 21 of the Building a Bulletproof Back podcast. Joining me today on Easter Sunday in your part of the world is Amanda Freed, who has a interesting back pain story and also is a yoga and mindfulness meditation teacher. So she's graciously given up some of her time today to speak about her experience and to share some of the learnings from her own experience of back pain. Welcome, Amanda. How are you today on Easter Sunday? Have you had your chocolate egg?
I have not had my chocolate egg yet.
Too early?
No, it's not. It's 4 p.m, but I chose scones and lemon curd.
Oh, it's an interesting combination.
Yeah.
Equally satisfying, I'm sure.
Close.
So, Amanda, can you please just, a brief introduction to the listeners and launch straight into your experience of back pain? That would be great.
Absolutely. Marian, I'm so excited to be with you and this miracle that we get to speak to each other from the other side of the world.
It's phenomenal, isn't it?
It really is. And, for me, it's a similar miracle that I can walk and do all of the things that I did before my back injury. I have been a massage therapist for over 37 years, a yoga teacher for over 20 years, super active, super healthy. And so my injury really came as a shock to me because I have a congenital weakness and it wasn't an event.
Okay.
So I was working in a pretty sedentary job, which is different for me. I was managing the massage school and I just started to feel uncomfortable. I started to have a little bit of glute pain. So I didn't realize, now I don't take medications typically.
Mm-hmm.
And I was popping them daily and kind of giving myself a little, as you would say, massage on the corner of a desk. And sometimes this happens insidiously.
Were you curious? Obviously, you would have been curious as to what was going on.
Absolutely. But, we all feel a little muscle tightness or strain. It felt like workout soreness, but I wasn't working out.
Okay.
And more than curious at that point, I think like most people, I just wanted it gone, right? Before we get curious, we get resistant.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm taking medication and doing all that. And then the pain became unbearable. And it was only in my calf, only one side. Many, many years prior, I had an x-ray at a chiropractor that I was working with. And he said, yeah, you have some abnormality in your back, but I hadn't had any problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so it came to a head. 2 weeks, I didn't sleep. I couldn't move. And I was in agony, constant. And I had my daughter, we don't like to rely on our kids unless it's dire.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to hospital and doctors didn't do an MRI, just gave me medication, which did nothing till they gave me morphine. I was like, this is great. In America, opioids are rampant.
Really? They're easy to access?
Well, we have a crisis. We have an addiction crisis. And largely because of things like this. People are in pain. The opioids take them out of pain. And many people are becoming addicted.
100%.
And so they did that. And I was on opioids for the next couple of weeks. until I had my diagnostics, which told me that I had something called a spondylolisthesis,
Yep.
where the vertebrae slides forward.
Yep.
I had pars defects, so the side processes were broken off.
Yep.
And it had happened many years prior, and I never knew. And it's probably congenital. There was no event.
Yeah. And I think I will just interject and say a pars defect is something that you can be born with and not have any pain from. So it in itself is not a recipe for pain, but it's a bit of a structural weakness that over time, with triggering of the wrong movements or provocative movements, it can weaken the structures till the point where the slippage becomes significant and the pain then lets you know that you're in that window of instability. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Carry on. Makes sense.
Yeah. And I was in so much pain. Had they told me discectomy, I would have done it immediately. But what they said was spinal fusion and not quite ready yet. So now I'm in agony. I can't work. I can't move. And what do I do? So we did transforaminal injections, which many people might know that would be similar to an epidural.
Yeah. Was that like a steroid-based injection to calm the inflammation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So they do a steroid and an analgesic, which for me took me enough out of pain so that I could take in hand my situation.
Wonderful. And sometimes that little bit of relief is like the breathing space to remember, okay, I'm not going mad. All of a sudden it's within a manageable space that you can then reclaim some of your power and start to exercise some other choices. So we mustn't poo-poo injections. There's lots medical world can offer, even if it is just to buy us the time for us to explore some other options, which it sounds like it did for you.
It's exactly what it did. It wasn't my plan, but it's what happened. Because I couldn't really fathom a spinal fusion.
Can I ask what frightened you so much about a spinal fusion versus a discectomy? You said you would have happily had the discectomy, but when they said fusion, you went, ugh. What in your mind is the difference?
It's such a perfect question. Discectomy, I was in so much pain that had they laid me down that day and said, we're just going to cut off the piece of the disc that's aggravating the nerve. Mm-hmm. I might have said, okay. A spinal fusion from that doctor, they were going to take a piece of my hip and insert it as the disc. So now I have 2 wound sites, my face for weeks for healing purposes, and healing was going to take up to a year, and they couldn't guarantee me anything. Mm-hmm. So that was the difference. And he said I wasn't ready for it yet anyhow, which I'm grateful. And so about 3 injections later, about 80% of my pain was gone. And so I had the wherewithal, you, and I don't know your history, but for your listeners, you know what pain does. Pain comes with fear, depression. I couldn't think straight. With all of the tools that I had in my toolbox, I couldn't reach for one while I was in agony.
Yeah, wow.
And now, like you said, with it cleared up a little bit, now I could see somehow my path forward. Yeah, and I just began really slowly to lean on the tools I already had. And the first, and I want people to know this above all else, the first was rest.
Oh, I love that. We have had this discussion. I can't remember what episode it was, but it was along the lines of just the power of resting, particularly from the movement directions and the postures that are provoking you. And people misinterpret rest as, and for some it can be laying down and doing nothing. And, for some people at some levels that could be appropriate. But often it's just resting from the provocative directions and postures And being in tune enough, I guess, to know what they are is another question.
Well, and the in tune part, I love that you brought that up because I'm a meditation and mindfulness teacher. Your body is talking to you. And when we're frantic and when we're in that pain or in a hurry to get better, we can't hear those messages.
Mm.
We don't know those things maybe that are provoking the pain.
Yeah. Do you think, were you that before your back pain? Did you have that aware? You did. Okay. And do you think if you'd been in such acute high level pain as you were, you could have actually learned those skills? Or do you feel sometimes you can be no, exactly. I agree. Sometimes, and I think there's such a power in having the tools before the assault, because in the crisis, unless they're practiced and honed and readily accessible, they're almost unreachable, even for people very well equipped and very, used to using them.
Even, this is how I like to put it. You don't wait till the house is on fire to go out and buy a fire extinguisher.
That's a great way. But what's the incentive if you're not in pain? That's the other thing. People are like, well, I'm not in pain. Why would I bother?
From a Buddhist perspective, and I'm not totally Buddhist, but we all have some degree of suffering in life.
Mm.
So even if you're not in physical pain, a mindfulness practice is good for all of us.
Yeah, definitely. And with all the wisdom, and hindsight since this turning point, I guess, in your life, or, a period of high stress, can you reflect, was it just structural in hindsight, or were there other things going on in your external world that were manifesting as that physical disablement of your body?
I don't even know you. You're brilliant. I was working at a job that didn't serve me. There was an integrity problem in the place that I was working. And I knew it.
Mm.
And so that mind-body connection that you're alluding to is very powerful. And until we get quiet, and sometimes, I say the body whispers and then it screams.
Oh, I love that too. I love that.
I was ignoring the whispers.
Mm. Even though you were quite in tune, that's why I said about that curiosity, yeah, I think if at the first onset of any visceral or physical sign, we can become curious and what is my body trying to have me notice here, and sit with that for a little bit. Sometimes we can circumvent the next phases. Maybe not always. Maybe we need all the other phases as well for some of us to help us learn.
But, I'm a meditation teacher and all those things, and I'm a human. So I have all the human frailties. I go into crisis like anybody else. When I was able, though, to be in a lower level of pain, then that's when my tools came back.
Yeah, that's a key point.
And when I had to be on my back or my butt for months at a time, and people said to me, "Oh, you can't move," because they know how active I am.
Mm-hmm.
That must have been very frustrating. I said, "What? I could be in pain and frustrated, or I could just be in pain."
Mm.
And so I read and I meditated and I rested and I loved my body, even though it pained me. And when I was ready to move, and only then, is when I started rehabbing for myself.
Brilliant. And was that rehab process a smooth one, or were there some bumps along the way?
Awesome question. So in the beginning, I did so little. I was so gentle on myself. And that's what I so want people to do. The idea of healing fully instead of quickly.
That's a key point too.
Every get well card says get well soon. I say get well fully.
I love that. That's great.
What's the rush?
Yeah. The rush comes from our perception that there's something wrong with the pain. And if we can embrace, like you're saying, if we can embrace the pain as an interesting co-partner for a transient time that we're being curious about and leaning into and embracing, then it does diffuse some of its power. Easier said than done, though, like you say.
And it depends on the level, and in no way to lack compassion or to be flip about it. All of those things come with the depression, the fear. I mean, I was in terror. I was never going to be able to move again. I understand that.
Yeah.
And it was only when medical intervention took me to a certain level that I could be with it when it was bearable to be with.
Mm-hmm.
And then I could really start to work on my mind,
Yeah.
my heart, my life situation, and my body. But I just want to go back to your question about whether it's linear or not.
Mm.
So I started very, very gently, just doing yoga standing poses. And we'll talk about core and what I was working on.
Mm.
Started very gently. And then over time, I realized that certain movements, while they may hurt while I was doing them, felt better later and days later.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And certain things I did felt good while I was doing them and then caused me pain later.
That's so interesting.
That's the awareness piece. Like for most people with low back injury, they always, always, always want to do forward bends because they feel like, oh, this relieves the pressure in my back. And it's with some injuries, it is so contraindicated.
Mm.
And it's going to make things worse. So that's the kind of ride that we go through. This might feel good now, but I want to see how it feels in a couple of days. This might be difficult now, but in a few days, it's better. Then I know I'm building myself back.
So that would almost indicate only doing one movement and then assessing the effect rather than a sequence of 15, 20, and then not knowing what the one was that wasn't useful.
Elimination diet of movement.
Yeah, yeah. So what did you start with then?
I literally only started with warrior poses.
Okay.
Standing, a warrior 2 pose, if anybody's familiar with that. A warrior 1 pose, where it's kind of like a standing lunge in a way, but not bent over, hands on hips, but with the back heel up. So I'm not torquing hips. So goddess pose, all standing poses to strengthen my legs.
Okay.
And maybe 5 minutes a day.
Yep. With breath.
With breath, with awareness, with mindfulness.
Yeah. So almost not just holding the static posture, just being in that static posture, not moving dynamically in and out of that position, just being.
Right. So, but yes, static holding.
Yep.
Typically not more than 30 seconds or so.
Okay.
Which is a long time.
Yeah.
In a pose. But no, not dynamic movement. And then we can talk about, what I feel are contraindicated and what are contraindicated movements.
Yeah, well, a spondylolisthesis is tricky, isn't it? Because it follows sometimes the opposite rules to 90% of back injuries. So it is a really good reminder that what you often read, this is one of my pet hates personally, is 7 moves for back pain. And I think, well, what back pain? Whose back pain? And, it's kind of a little bit frightening when I see things like that, particularly in someone who hasn't developed their somatic trust, which is what you're alluding to in hearing the signals and knowing what to do with them. Is this a green light that I go for? Is this an amber light that I pause and just sit with to find out if it's safe or unsafe? That phrase is something that I observe is really lost in most people. They really are looking for external guidance on what should I be doing, what's okay for me. And I think that's dangerous on some level.
I guess it depends on who that external guidance is coming from too, right?
Mm.
Because a lot of people don't have that awareness.
Exactly.
And so, I have it all the time. I'll be teaching a yoga class and people will say, well, I have a back injury. My doctor told me to go to a yoga class. And I go, no, please don't just go to a yoga class.
Mm.
And I've had people who teach yoga for back care. I've got quotes around that, who don't have back injuries.
Yeah.
And so I am such a huge proponent at this point for do a couple of private lessons so that when you do walk into that yoga class, you are empowered to know what is good for you in your body, what is and isn't safe, and then to advocate for yourself with that teacher.
Yeah. Which that can be hard. Advocating for yourself in a class and saying, actually, that's not feeling right. Can I have a modification, please? Or I'm just going to do this while this sequence is happening and then I'll jump back in. Yeah, so I think we need to also, a good teacher often gives people phrases to use for when they need to alert the practitioner's attention to the fact this is not working. They're not feeling it where it's desirable to feel it. Right. And that they actually need to pause or ask or sit, give them active ways to handle that, because that does happen a lot.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I feel like that one or two private sessions with a skilled practitioner, so that you don't even have to go into that class and ask for modifications. You already have your modifications in your pocket.
Exactly. So how do you think it changed you as a yoga teacher?
It did change me from wanting to do public classes to privates.
Interesting. Yeah.
And until you have that experience, a lot of it is the compassion.
Yeah.
And the gauging, and I'm a lot more absolute about what I want people to do and not do. Because, as you said, it's so hard to advocate for yourself. Because people walk into a yoga class and they look at what everybody else can do. And so, I wish I could do that, and I want to be able to do that. Rather than go, what does this body do now?
Yeah.
And what is beneficial? When we talk about yoga, people want to go to the next level because it looks cool. And yoga wants us to go to the next level when the level that we're at doesn't offer any benefit or challenge. Very different way of looking at it.
Definitely, definitely. Wow. So when I talk to you about the term bulletproof back, what comes up for you? What key aspects or ingredients do you think are required?
So many things. And I don't know what it's like there. Medicine in the United States is, I can't even use the words, but we have to really change our thinking as to my mind, what is the core? We've been taught, I'm 61 years old.
Wow.
And the core.
You're in great shape.
The core and core exercises were all crunches. It was all abs. Nobody's abs are that strong. No, and so we do all that with our backs. 80% of Americans have back pain, at least. And so switching the mindset to understand what the core actually is, which includes the inner thigh or adductor muscles, the quads, the glutes, and that we take the focus off the back and put it on these biggest, heaviest muscles and bones in the body that are meant to support us. The vertebrae are so small. And the other thing they told us in the 80s, to have our back straight. What happened to the curves that the good Lord put there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it's so, for me, Bulletproof Back, education.
Yep.
Changing mindset.
Yep.
And that's big.
Yeah, that's huge. And how often do you think, I truly believe When back pain hits significant levels and it's constant and it's unremitting and many people are not having an impact on it, at that stage of the game, I really believe there's deep-seated emotional unrest, deep-seated mental unrest, and the physical is almost the easy part to treat. The other two dimensions are the real issue. And I think the reason, 80-90% of people in the US are in back pain worldwide, 8 out of 10 of us at some point in life, and the billions of dollars being spent on back pain in our health economy is huge. And it possibly is the most ineffective treatment pathway for anyone with any condition, purely because we're treating the body. And the body is only reflecting the deeper issues. Now, you can still heal it via coming at it from the body, but I think the reason it's so prolific and so poorly mismanaged is because of our perception of it being a physical body issue, when it's really a combination of a mental and an emotional issue. And I think if we can embrace that concept, then that opens doors for potential ways to move through it, which aren't currently being explored, which is the intention of the podcast.
Absolutely. And I love that you're doing this, and I love that you're not afraid to talk in favor of and on the other side of the argument about medical intervention.
Yeah.
If somebody feels it right to go and have surgery, go do that. I am not telling somebody to not do that. My story is my story.
Yeah.
I want to say that really clearly. And to your point, if we look at the Eastern philosophies, the base of the spine is the root of the being. And so we talk about that being the core of your energetic being. And it has a lot to do with moving forward in our lives, with fear of moving forward in our lives. And when we start to then work energetically, but they have to come together.
Yeah.
We cannot, in the 70s, we thought, oh, I'm just a spiritual being. A lot of the Brahmins were denying their humanity.
Wow.
But we know better now. The Tantrikas came along and said, no, your body's a gift. So we can hit that emotional, spiritual piece while honoring the body and through the body.
Yeah. And I often talk about we can embrace our spirituality through our physicality. I firmly believe we are spiritual beings, but we chose a physical body to interact with our physical world and to have all the pleasure and all the fun and all the joy of moving. So it can't be one or the other. And this is the term holistic rehabilitation. I think it's perhaps overused, and sometimes I hear people talking about themselves as holistic practitioners, but they're, from what I perceive, it's still not really covering all bases, but that's okay. I love that the word's being used a little bit more commonly. And so what would be your top few tips for someone from where you are now back to that person where you were? What are your core nuggets of wisdom that you could share and pass on that may help someone today?
So to put it down into 3 or 4 little bullet points.
Yep.
I can't emphasize enough rest. The idea of really being with it. And rest, we're so afraid of rest. We're so afraid of rest. I don't want to miss work. I don't want to miss this party. That's where the gold is. That's what your body's asking you for. So that you can create that space. Then the second thing is the communication with your body.
Love it.
That mindfulness piece. Ask your body, what's going on? That's a conversation to be had. It's telling you, you just can't hear it.
Yeah. You sound so like me. I feel like you've been in my practice every day.
I'm coming. I've never been there. I'm coming.
Have you been watching me? I use the talk to your body, love your body, love it through its pain. It's only asking for integration and love. But, what do you need, body? What is it that I'm not giving you that you really need?
Absolutely. In any area. I mean, I lost my job. I had to leave a pretty lucrative job because my body, I went back.
I bet something better came along, though.
Everything better came along. Life came along. I went back after I was somewhat healed. And they welcomed me back with open arms. And within a week, I was in agony again.
Oh, I kind of love that and hate that. I love that your body was so clear in that, dude, get out of here. This isn't for you.
So clear. And thank goodness my manager was mindful. And she said, Amanda, you are perfect for this job. And this job is horrible for you. And I was so grateful. So your body will tell you. It's that. It's the rest. It's the mindfulness, mindful listening.
Yep.
Build backs. But really diagnostics. Before that, you do have to do your diagnostics. We are humans. Sometimes we're blessed that we find a different or a deeper problem. So I believe in medical intervention. Go get pictures. We can't see inside.
No, this is what is being shown, and with knowledge is power. Even if you don't like what you see, or at least you know what you're dealing with. And I think there is no harm in dealing with it physically, dealing with it mentally. You can deal with it on every single level, but to not deal with it on every single level is where we get ourselves entangled.
I work with athletes a lot. At a university, I've worked with Olympic athletes. I've worked with traumatic brain injury patients, the whole gamut. And when people are resistant to diagnostics, we got problems. We're poking around in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got it, just like you're listening within, you have to listen without too.
Yeah, love that. That's a really practical blend.
Yeah. And then slow rehab. Sometimes, I don't want to insult anybody or hurt anybody's feelings. Sometimes physical therapy is quick. It's a little too, let's get you back.
Yeah.
To what you were doing before. You know, if what we were doing before worked, this wouldn't happen. So the idea of go forward instead of the desire to go back. As you said, what opened up in my life afterwards? And had I gone back, it didn't work.
Yeah. And your story represents that. It's a real story in that the crisis was the pause, stopgap required for you to come into a deeper knowing of yourself, what worked for you, change of direction in career. Often for athletes, it can be a change of sporting direction. There's so many transitionary phases that back pain is almost a catalyst for. And again, when we hear that from someone else, it can send our own mind down that process of inquiry as to, maybe my body's actually trying to communicate something to me, and maybe it's time to pivot direction on my sporting career or my career or my relationship. God forbid, we could talk about that one forever.
It's a whole different podcast.
I'm not a relationship counselor, but anyway. All right. So thank you, Amanda. They're great tips. I love that you shared what you shared. Some of those one-liners are going in the show notes, some of those key quotes. I really loved them. Where can people, if they want to reach out to you, what do you offer? Is there anything you're offering for people in back pain?
Absolutely. I do online, one-on-one assessment, yoga sessions, mindfulness, meditation.
Beautiful.
It's, as you said, it's the whole thing. I do women's empowerment because a lot of this, we've lost our power. So all of that I offer online, individual, small groups. I travel across the world teaching retreats and workshops. I'm happy to come to anybody's town. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I will include those links in the show notes for people. If they're hearing you and resonating with you, then they'll know where to find you.
And there's always free consultation and conversations. It's my honor, and such an honor to be with you today.
Oh, yeah, that was really lovely. I always love these conversations. You have a very loose intent about where it goes, but it finds its own path. And I learn so much from having the conversations about hearing the different perspectives. It's so nice to see some universal themes, but also then to have these sideline perspectives that I hadn't personally considered myself, which is the idea of the chat, so that the people listening can get those perspectives for themselves and see which ones really challenge them or see which ones just feel right for them, because we're all individuals and our back pain represents many different things for each of us. But I just applaud people for having an open enough mind to have the listening. Is it possible? What could happen? What should I perceive? What can I, how can I look at this differently? And ultimately we hope the experience becomes an empowering one for them at the end of the road.
Absolutely.
All right, my friend, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for your time, and I shall reach out when all this is ready to go and let you know.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marion.
My pleasure. Bye. Enjoy your day. Happy Easter.
Thanks.
As we wrap up another empowering episode of Building Bulletproof Backs, remember that your journey to healing is within reach. For more invaluable resources and guidance, visit www.bulletproofbacks.com. Dive deeper into Marion's transformative approach to banishing back pain by exploring her book, From Broken to Bulletproof: Unconventional Ways to Banish Back Pain. Discover the Bulletproof Back System, a holistic framework that integrates mindset, emotional fitness, and quality movement re-education to heal stubborn pain. Whether you're seeking online courses, coaching, or consulting, Marion has you covered on your path to a pain-free life. Until next time, stay resilient and keep moving forward.